Family, what is going on? It's your boy Travis Kinley. I am fresh off of home time, so I'm feeling charged and refreshed and ready to just turn the miles. As promised, I wanted to bring you an hours of service video, and we're going to call this Hours of Service 101. Let's do it. This is your boy Travis Kinley coming to you with an Hours of Service 101 video. One of my friends, Jenna, prime driver Jenna, told me, you know, sometimes you're making a lot of videos where it's the exact type of thing that people were thinking about whenever they were thinking about joining Prime. And I was like, well, that totally makes sense because I haven't been at it more than like 3-4 months, something of that nature. So this is really for those people who are thinking about joining Prime or any other trucking agency rather, and you're like, man, what is this whole hours of service thing? The internet makes it sound extremely complicated. I get it. I'm going to try to simplify it as much as possible. Okay, and we are going to start from the bottom and work our way up. Let's get it. So you have 4 different clocks, right? 4 different clocks. One is an 8-hour clock, an 11-hour clock, a 14-hour clock, and a 70-hour clock. We're going to talk about all 4 clocks, and while talking about all 4 clocks, we're going to recap. As we go to the next clock, we're going to cover that clock and then recap everything we've discussed. So first, let's start with the bottom, the 70-hour clock, the largest one, that kind of foundational base, okay? Your 70-hour clock limits how many hours you can work in 1 week. In any given 7-day span, okay? Whether it's Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, that clock is telling you this is how many hours you have left before you run out since we started this clock. Since we started whatever day of the week you started that 70-hour clock on, it's saying here's how many hours you have left, okay? The only way to reset that clock all the way back to 70 is the truck must be stopped. It must be off duty, rather. You have to be off duty in some capacity for 34 hours straight. Okay, off duty for 34 hours straight. You have a 70-hour clock. It limits to how many hours you can run since you started that clock. And the only way to reset it completely is that you must be off duty for 34 hours straight. There's some other ways to add hours to the clock. That will be in Hours of Service class 102. Let's get it. Now let's talk about the 14-hour clock, one level up, kind of like we're building a pyramid, right? The 14-hour clock limits how many hours you can drive in 1 work day. Now understand me on this, okay? When I say work day, I'm not talking about today. Like today is Friday, October 30th, okay? I'm not talking about just on Friday. If I started my work day on Friday at 10 o'clock p.m., then that 14-hour clock says you gotta be done driving by Saturday at 12 p.m. 14 hours later, okay? So that 14-hour clock limits how many hours you can drive in a work day, or sometimes I call it a work shift. You cannot work more than 14 hours. Now, I'm not talking about drive more than 14 hours. You cannot work more than 14 hours. How do I reset this clock? You reset this clock by being off duty for 10 hours straight. You have to take a 10-hour break, okay? So within your 70-hour work week, you're gonna have 7 or so work shifts, right? And with those shifts, you cannot work more than 14 hours during that work day or work shift, okay? And then you'll take a 10-hour break, and then you'll do another 14-hour work day, and you'll take a 10-hour break, and you do another 14-hour work day. Now, you may only drive 2 hours during that 14-hour work day, but nevertheless, you must take a 10-hour break in order to reset that 14-hour clock. Now, there's some ways to stop it. There's some ways to kind of pause it, things of that nature for the day, but we'll talk about that in Hours of Service 102 or maybe 103. This is kind of complex. But it's okay. It's really not that bad. All right. 70-hour work week. You reset that with a 34-hour break. 14-hour work day. You reset that with a 10-hour break. The next level up is an 11-hour clock. Your 11-hour clock states that within your 14-hour workday, you cannot actually drive the truck more than 11 hours. That's a cool rule. That's a super cool rule. Okay. Within a 14-hour workday, you cannot drive more than 11 hours. Okay. So you might take a break. You're going to have to go to the restroom eventually. You want to eat something of that nature, whatever. Maybe you just want to pull off, stretch your legs. Maybe you want to get out the truck, jump rope, right? You got 14-hour workday, but you can't drive more than 11 hours in that work day. And you're going to do those 14-hour days over and over every single hour day. And then you'll reset with the 10-hour break, and your 14-hour day, and you'll reset with a 10-hour break. But within the whole week, 70 hours a week. 70 hours a week, 14-hour workday, 11 hours to drive within your 14-hour workday. How do you reset the 11 hours? Same thing as your 14-hour clock. That 10-hour break will reset your drive time, your 11-hour clock. Cool? Let's get it. Last, we got one more clock all the way at the top of the pyramid. You have your 8-hour clock. What is an 8-hour clock then? Your 8-hour clock says within your 11 hours of drive time, you cannot drive more than 8 hours of time consecutively in one run. You can't drive more than 8 hours. Well, what do I do to get to the whole 11? You need to take a 30-minute break. You need to be off duty for 30 minutes, okay? 8 hours is the max you can drive in at one time, in one sitting, if you will. And then you take a 30-minute break and you will get more time back. It will start all over at 8 hours or as much as it can without exceeding 11 hours. Let me give you a couple examples before we finish, okay? You have an 11-hour drive time. It starts with your 8-hour clock, right? I can't drive more than 8 hours. Well, if I drive 2 hours and I take a 30-minute break, it's going to start back over at 8 hours. Okay, since I only drove 2 hours, I'm not even maxing out this 11-hour clock yet, right? So if I drive 2 hours and it starts back at 8 and then I drive that whole 8 hours, I've driven 10 hours. There's 1 hour missing. You see, in order to get that hour back, you got to take another 30-minute break and then you get your 1 hour back. Okay, so here's just a little bit of a rookie tip for you. Most people would like to drive. When you start your first shift, you start that drive, they want to drive at least 3 hours. That way, when I take a 30-minute break, it's not mandatory for me to take a second 30-minute break if I wanted to drive my full 11-hour clock all the way out. All right, so you got your 8-hour clock. Your 8-hour clock says you cannot drive more than 8 consecutive hours at a time before taking a 30-minute break, and then you'll get more time back. You'll get another 8 hours or however many hours would complete your 11-hour clock. So one more example. If, let's say, I start my day and I drive 5 hours in one sitting, right? I've got 3 hours before my 8-hour clock runs out. However, I'm going to take a quick 30-minute break. I'm going to eat. Maybe I'll catch a quick shower or something. I am going to be left with what? 6 hours, because 6 plus the 5 hours that I drove already is 11. You see, that clock wouldn't start all the way back at 8. It would just max at 6 because it's not going to give you more hours than you can legally drive, okay? So 70 hours in a week. You can't drive more than 70 hours in a week. You reset that with a 34-hour clock. 14-hour work days or work shifts. You can't drive more than 14 hours in a day. To reset that clock, you reset it with a 10-hour break. And then you have an 11-hour drive clock. You can't drive more than 11 hours in that 14-hour work day or work shift, however you like to think about it. And within those 11 hours, you can't drive more than 8 hours in one sitting. A 30-minute break will reset that. So, family, thank you for tuning in. And this is Hours of Service video 101, and I will shoot 102 as soon as I grab some spare time. Love y'all, and I'll see you soon. Be safe.